Hello, my name is Christine Gervais, and I am the director of the Rienzi collection here at the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, the decorative arts wing of the museum. I'm here this morning to talk about this remarkable piece of furniture residing behind me, which is the Dundas sofa, a recent purchase by the museum really as of just last year, and on view at Rienzi as of last September. The Dundas sofa is a remarkable survival of 18th century furniture. It was commissioned in 1764 by a gentleman named Sir Lawrence Dundas. Dundas, whose nickname was the Nabob of the North, because he had made a fortune in the textile trade. His family of merchants, Scottish merchants, had received the commission to outfit the English army in the middle of the 18th century, which was a period of great war, which means they made a lot of money. He took this money and began to buy art and commission buildings for himself, a great country house and also a London townhouse on number 19 Arlington Street. This particular piece of furniture was part of a suite commissioned for the drawing room of that house. His architect of choice was a man named Robert Adam, perhaps the most famous English architect in England and Scotland. He was himself Scottish, in the middle to the late 18th century. Adam was commissioned to work on the country house, but also to refurbish and redo the interiors of the London townhouse. The other person who is most interestingly involved with this piece of furniture is a man named Thomas Chippendale, a name familiar to many because his name spawned a style and many, many imitators. This particular piece of furniture is part of a larger suite that was delivered in 1765, just a year later, which had in it two long sofas, of which this is one. It's an 8-foot long sofa, two smaller sofas, and an accompanying 8 armchairs. What makes this unusual and an immensely rare piece is that it is the only documented suite of furniture in which these two giants of 18th century English design are known to have collaborated. We know because we have Robert Adams' watercolor drawing for this piece of furniture, which is currently held at the Sir John Soane Museum in London. And we also have the notation in Chippendale's receipt book that he had finished this sofa and it had been delivered. So it's one in which we know that these two collaborated. It's also unusual that Chippendale mostly, I should say, made furniture to his own design. And in this, he is being guided by Robert Adam. This is important because Adam had just returned just a few years earlier from what was called the Grand Tour, where a young gentleman, either an aristocrat or usually an artist, would go through Europe heading down to the ultimate destination, which was Rome, where they would study the great works of antiquity. Adam in particular was interested in antique ruins, antique buildings, and he came back and used that knowledge, used the drawings of these places that he had seen, and used the decoration and used the forms in his interiors and indeed on his furniture. Chippendale was up to that point known for doing sort of French style furniture or Gothic style furniture. The antique style was not something that was part of his vocabulary, and he was very, very proud of this new design moment. In fact, in the receipt book, he refers to this suite as the antique suite that he had delivered, meaning he had done it in the antique style, something very new for him. And you can see in some of the details on the sofa behind me, particularly this beautifully carved gilded ornamentation, we have griffins, we have sphinxes, we have anthemia, which are sort of stylized palmette flowers, all of which sort of cavorting across the front of this piece, the shape of which is actually intended to imitate a Roman banqueting couch, which would have been backless. So you have these two high sides with curved arms and then this undulating front with this beautiful carving. The carving for which, under Adam's aegis, under his design authority, he is actually looking to real buildings, the Temple of Faustina, various other bits of this ornament which can be directly related to buildings that are still existent today, making it a very informed piece of neoclassicism. It's an interesting piece as well in that it exists in the intersection between the Rococo period, where everything is about this curving line, what one art critic would call the waving line of beauty, And then this very intense interest in the classical world and the antique world, which will then lead to neoclassicism and the advent of everything having very strict straight lines. And so this, from 1765, is existing in both those worlds. This is also a fascinating piece for us in that it was delivered to the family in 1765 and remained in the family well into the 20th century. They achieved a marquisate, they become marquises, and they retained the entire suite until about the 1930s, when the house in London was being torn down and some of the pieces were actually sold. An armchair from the suite is actually on view in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. This particular piece was retained in the family until last year, when the Museum of Fine Arts Houston purchased it, meaning that it has an unbroken line of provenance, the history of the ownership of an object, to 1765, an almost unheard of thing, because objects have lives and many people want to own them, and they have often checkered pasts or unusual paths. This is a straight line from that moment of delivery to here, where you can see it here at the Museum of Fine Arts Houston at Rienzi. It's a remarkable piece, and we are incredibly proud to be able to show this to Houston. And please come by and see this. Rienzi will actually be open on Monday for Boxing Day, a traditional day, the day after Christmas, where in England and the UK, they in the 19th century, they would give gifts to their servants in little boxes, but it's now been retained as another holiday, which we will be celebrating here. So please come by. There will be tours, there will be a harpist, there will be hot chocolate. We would welcome you all to come to look at our art and also indulge in a great English tradition.